Nicole, this is going to be a very long-winded question to start a podcast. So bear with me
All right.
because I'm going to make a comparison, and I think it's apt. But we lived in this era of the internet where for 15 years people could buy pretty much anything and they didn't, and it felt weird. It felt increasingly weird because you're like, well, you could just buy it online, but you don't.
Mhm.
And I think we're at this like tipping point now with social selling through social media, where especially TikTok, especially with platforms, and you're at the forefront of this. So I really want to get your thoughts on it, your opinion on it. Am I right that we are at the tipping point of when people should just obviously buy things straight from social media?
That's a great question. I think it depends on the person. I
Okay.
tend to feel like it's generation specific as well. And we are getting to the point where people are learning to use social media to buy. It's still not at the point where you might see it in other regions where it's just normalized and you purchase on platforms like in China on a social
Hmm.
media platform first and then go in store second. But I
Yeah.
think getting closer to a point where people feel comfortable and more accustomed to buying online, whether it's because of price options that are lower with coupons and discounts and subsidies for brands, or if it's just a matter of convenience where it's a seamless checkout and you see the product you like, so why go get it elsewhere?
Yeah. I mean, technologically, we're there. It's
Yeah.
more so changing people's habits. But trust is built online, so that part is there. Yes, it's more about changing habits.
Mhm.
Um, you've been doing live streaming for about 10 years, right?
Yes, yeah. I started as a streamer myself, and now I'm behind the scenes, thankfully, because I can't imagine having to be in front of the camera for like the 10 hours that I used to stream at any given time.
Oh, I can feel that. Both as retired streamers, this is a wonderful thing. Even though we are technically recording this on camera, it is way more relaxed.
Yeah.
To give you my bona fide, so that we're in the same spot, I was once put in a glass box in Times Square for 10 hours and told to do content. Um, so I can deeply relate to it. But yes, there is an energy. What was the moment where you realized I would like to be behind the scenes? Was it mental, or did you just see the economics?
I think there were a few factors that pushed me over into deciding that it was my time to retire as a streamer and just enter my phase as just the advisor or the support system for those in front of the camera. One, it was given safety concerns. So, unfortunately, when you stream a lot, there's people who build
Yeah.
what everyone's talking about, the parasocial relationship, where they feel like they have a close connection to you. And I've spoken about this outwardly before, but I had an incident where I was swatted, which is essentially
Yeah.
where people find out your address, they contact the police, and cause this situation to make the SWAT team go to your house.
Hmm.
And it was at the time I was about 16 years old when it happened. It caused me to have to move. My information was leaked, and I realized, hey, I'm not meant for this lifestyle. There are people who are braver than I am and willing to take that risk, or may have done it in a more cautious way, setting it up using an alias, a stage name, and putting those safeguards around VPN and having that IP protection, which is wonderful. I was 16 at the time, had no idea. So that safety situation was one of those pivotal moments where I realized, I don't know if I'm made for this. But then wanting to stay in the space, I built such a love for the sense of community that was built online, and people who had that relationship that was experienced with a streamer and amongst themselves where they felt like they were building a community. I loved that and I thought it was so beautiful. And I realized that that's something that is not taken advantage of by most creators, by most brands. They don't understand what relationship is formed on stream versus just in that static content that they're creating on Instagram, which you don't really build a connection with as much.
Yeah, there's I wish we didn't live in a world where people got swatted, right?
Yes.
It's it's utopian to believe that that would never exist. Like that will probably continue to exist, if not be more prevalent. It's it's a generational thing that people on this podcast will understand it more than other podcasts. But when you try and explain what that is to people in generations further, they're like, how? But why? But that's just that is the nature of
Yeah.
it, right? For a lot of people who have left, um it's kind of like or I feel like I've aged out of it, or I want to change my career or something. Safety concern is a real thing, and it's felt. Do you miss the dopamine rush of creating interactive content?
I would say no. I
Hmm.
have beautiful opportunity to work with so many amazing brands and creators where to me I feel like I'm living vicariously through them and doing the things that I never felt like I could do as an independent creator, just with the opportunities that I have with different budgets that I can play with for brands,
Yeah.
or even just different audiences with the creators that I work with who might be a little bit more education focused creators and are trying to provide knowledge to their viewers, which I find so beautiful. And I was just a singer on You Now. I wasn't trying to educate people. This time around, I feel like I get to have fun and use this as a tool to expand knowledge and resources to people, or just access to products and understanding of options that exist in the market. And I think that hits the same button that going live
Hmm.
is to for me. I'm sure that's not everyone's experience, but certainly for me, I love creating that content, strategizing on behalf of the brands so that they can experience that and the creators.
No, I think that's a really evolved experience. It's not dissimilar to how I felt. Most I say that as now I'm doing a podcast because I still need to still need to be out there and relevant and remind people that I'm living. But I get it, right? I get that you can get the same feeling from brands, and you reach a tipping point, and there's not a age demographic or years that you're in this space really to point to, as much as it's just a feeling of, I have knowledge now. I would like to share that knowledge. But we're 7 minutes in. I should have done this a lot earlier. Talk to me about your agency. Tell everyone what it does and why it's so awesome.
Sure. So I run Ghost Agency with my lovely co-founder, Jenny Wu. The two of us came together actually only last year, so we're still early in this. But we decided to form a social commerce agency, and we were lucky enough to be approached by TikTok to become one of the first TikTok shop partners in the US, where we get to work directly with TikTok's strategy team and brands to form this experience that is TikTok Shop that's now suddenly hit everyone's For You page, probably a little bit too much. They're figuring that out. But that's a lot of what I do day in, day out. But we also help with other platforms like Twitch, Amazon Live.
Yeah.
We love the gaming space. We love everything that has to do with on website social commerce. And so we really are just here to help brands and creators understand what this is, how they can best leverage this, because it's going to be very unique if you want to be successful. And also, we produce content. So that's always a fun thing that we do out of our Los Angeles studio.
Well, isn't it interesting? Like you get large brands that will come to you and they're asking for your expertise, right? and
Yes.
and, and it's real and it's warranted, but I'm sure it feels surreal because that probably wasn't the end goal when you started. It's definitely it seems clear now, but just tell me the first time you worked with a brand and just what that felt like.
Well, I started when I was streaming in the monetization space. That really intrigued me, which was fascinating as a 16-year-old to just be playing around with tips and what does that look like? And no, I'd rather go the brand end and what does that look like? And so I had the opportunity while I was a streamer on YouNow many, many, many years ago, and was speaking with the team at the company to understand, okay, what does a sponsorship look like through a live stream? Because I'm seeing people post on Instagram, and these were the early days of brand deals really on Instagram. What does it look like on You Now? Is that a thing? And I had the opportunity to get my first sponsorship was Coca-Cola. This actually won or was a semifinalist in the Shorty Awards live stream participation in YouNow back in like 2016. So it's really full
Awesome.
circle here. But Coca-Cola was my first brand deal in 2016, where they worked with me and a few other YouNow streamers to try to figure out what does live streaming look like behind the scenes of things like red carpet. How do we put our products in there without making it too aggressive and obscene? We don't want that to feel overwhelming. So that was my first experience trying to understand what it looks like for a brand. And since then, now I had with the agency, our first opportunity as an independent agency was actually a former client that I worked with at a past agency. And they followed us over because they loved the type of work we've done. And it was just beautiful to see that they, as a mid sized toy company that's been doing incredible work, just wanted to get it in a way that was really beautiful. They were willing to listen, they were willing to learn. They understood that traditional pre recorded video or static content wasn't going to resonate the same way as live streaming. And I really appreciated seeing brands like this that are willing to be innovative and willing to listen and figure it out and even play with us as we collectively are figuring out what does this look like on a platform like TikTok Shop.
Yeah. I'm assuming there's a lot of A/B testing on this. I mean, there's a lot of trial and error still, even if you specifically have a ton of expertise and can guide people. I mean, the obvious reason for working with you is that you have a long-standing expertise in being able to connect with an audience, figure out how these brands can navigate that, right? And kind of put your head in their space and figure out how you can connect those things. That's the purpose of it. But talk to me just a little bit about when you go into a conversation with any brand, so a brand that you haven't worked with before, and they haven't done a thing in this space, where do they start?
Every brand and every category is going to be different, and
Yes.
their willingness to play is also going to vary. We love working with brands who are just ready to try different things and on different platforms because that's how we're best going to figure out where their audience will resonate. But I would say the best approach to take is if a brand already has a presence on a platform and that platform has social shopping capabilities, try it out because you should go where your audience lives. If you have people already on website, try something out on your website and make it social, like add in social commerce elements to it, make your PDPs shoppable. If you have a really large Instagram following, start going live there, start using shoppable posts. We just heard that Amazon announced a partnership with Meta where all of the Amazon ads can now have, and I think that's going to come out soon, shoppable capabilities where you can click and buy all in Instagram and all in Facebook without needing to leave the platform. Try these things. Go with the new and the shiny if you have an existing audience on that platform. And then I would say after you've already tested that out and become familiar with what that looks like, that's when you can start really playing because you can be a little bit more exciting and try new audiences. One of my favorites is Twitch
Mm.
because brands are still navigating that space, learning how to play with it. Of course, there's a lot of gaming companies, tech companies, energy drinks on the platform, but we actually have been piloting some of our beauty brands and some of our toy brands to tap into audiences that they can't reach elsewhere. We actually learned from Twitch that over 70% of audiences on Twitch cannot be reached on TikTok. And so
Yeah.
these are very differentiated audiences. And so we want brands to try these new avenues and learn how they can acquire a new audience in these different spaces.
Well, that's one of the. I didn't intend on this being the follow up, but you gave it to me because the thing with me and Twitch is that it still feels like an underutilized platform for what is there for what the audience is, right? I don't think it gets discussed enough when it comes to where it exists in both advertising and commerce.
I cannot agree more. Twitch is so powerful and impactful because viewers actually want to tip and pay
Hmm.
creators just because they like the creators. And so if you add in the element of a partnership, that changes the whole game, where different streamers, when they are actually sponsored, users on Twitch are more excited for the sake of the creator because they feel like they as a
Yeah.
community are winning and that this can continue. And the brands who are learning to sponsor creators, I don't necessarily think every brand should create their own channel because it's difficult to try and capture attention on that platform for every category. But for
Mhm.
brands that are sponsoring creators and trying to support them, then it feels like they're supporting this community, which viewers love.
Yeah, there has to be some authenticity when you're going into that space, obviously. Um, I when I'm advising people, and I'm clearly not working in this space, I'm a PR person, but when I'm advising people to go into places they haven't gone, a lot of the times I just talk about breaking the fourth wall and just completely just admitting like, hey, we're just testing this out. We're having fun with this. We're not taking ourselves too seriously. Because I think that's authentic and that's genuine, right? And that's what people bond with. But you hit it the nail on the head with when it comes to creators, right? People want that creator to continue to make things, right? It's like you would never think of people wanting to pay like a tip to keep a show on broadcast television 15 years ago, but they very
Yeah.
much will want to keep a creator going, right? Or a podcast or everything. Those things make sense because there's a deeper connection.
Yeah. Yeah. It's more
Um,
too.
yeah, and I mean, and that's the other thing too is if you can, and I think this is the selling point for selling. That's very meta, but if you can create these kinds of relationships, right? So we've already in advertising, we've already gone from unfortunately, like I went to school for advertising and I thought I was going to do Super Bowl commercials, and boy was I wrong. I got into PR, but I realized very quickly that we were moving toward an era where it wasn't about how clever you could be to do an advertisement to the masses. It was how do we find that person at 11:30 that's doom scrolling Zillow? And the same thing can be said here. It's you're trying to find people where they are, and you're trying to find people where they would like to spend their time. And I think there's probably a lot of data to prove this is where they're spending their time.
Right.
Um, and is that part of the argument then in trying? So I'm assuming brands come to you. You don't have to go to brands.
I would say it's a mix of both, but mostly
Yeah.
brands come to us. We
Yeah.
we find brands that we really would love to work with, and we'll reach out to them if we see that they're already creating content that we admire or feel like they would be a perfect fit. But we've been blessed to have most of our client base come to us.
Yeah. Because I mean, the expertise is obvious. They need the guidance in that space. They're smart brands just know when to fall back and take the guidance and know that there are people that can navigate that, right? um, how do you see this space evolving over the next 3 to 5 years?
I love that question. I have a few predictions for what is to come in social shopping, and
Ooh,
I
I'm hitting Marcus clip. Sorry, I'm interrupting. We have a Marcus clip button and I'm doing it. This is the
okay,
exciting
go
part.
for it. So I would say that one of my main predictions is that social shopping is going to lose its wow factor in that it's
Hmm.
not going to be as shiny and as in your face, but instead it's just going to be integrated into how social media exists. So what I
Mm.
mean by that is when
Yeah.
you're scrolling on TikTok Shop right now, everyone has to explain what they're doing and that they're making a TikTok Shop video, which is exactly what makes it so annoying right now because people
Correct.
don't feel sold to. And oftentimes people will compare the US to China and say, oh, but we have to try and mimic a direct selling culture where we have to force people to feel like they have to watch a stream to see the products in real time and give them demos. But culturally, it's very different.
Mhm.
No one wants to be influenced, they want to be the influencer here. And so, because
Yes.
of that, I foresee it shifting away from this intense selling tactic, but instead having typical normal videos like what we see on TikTok or on Twitch, but rather people will just see the items in that video so they can buy it if they so choose to do that. So
Hmm.
basically eliminating the like to know it's and the Amazon storefronts from needing to be an external link, but rather when people are making their video, they don't have to say, hey, I'm using this blush, buy it on my TikTok shop, which I have here. Instead, it'll
Yeah.
just be understood that every product that is being used, every outfit that's worn, even if it's not a product focused video, will be shoppable within every piece of content. And I think that's going to make things a lot easier, and it's not going to annoy as many people, but rather they'll feel like it's a convenient part of social media that will be added to their life. I also think that one of the other elements of social shopping, which we're already seeing the early stages of with what Walmart has been working on with NBC Universal, it's social shopping being implemented into TV and into film. And so I recently learned about Walmart's efforts with Below Deck Mediterranean, where they've partnered with Curve Interactive, and all of the plates that you're seeing on Below Deck during that, there's going to be commercial breaks where AI is scanning the screen and compiling a list of similar items that you can purchase, and you can just scan it with a QR code on your phone and see all the products to buy. I think that there's some extra steps there that are going to be eliminated. And so when you're watching something like the Grammys soon, I hope, I would say in the next 2 years, given that we're getting there with the technology, you're watching the Grammys, you're watching a live show, you like what people are wearing, you want it, and you can just click and buy from your screen and you don't need to exit. And so there's a lot of these types of pieces where social commerce will be less flashy, but it'll just be more a commonplace piece of social media.
No, that makes sense. And with the Grammy example too, like not only like the actual version, but the fast fashion version that's probably in everybody else's price range and not the
Exactly.
$17,000
Yeah.
item that, like the bespoke custom item they're making. But like, hey, how can I get this at? I won't name a retailer because I don't want to, I don't want to like say who it would be, who it wouldn't be.
Yeah.
That's what we do here. We do not we don't specifically name places, but I could see that happening, right?
Yeah.
I could also it's a good allusion to like when the YouTube days of, and don't get me wrong, you still get this on YouTube, but the click rate and subscribe, leave a 5-star review kind of, you know, yeah, that existed. And there are ways, there's buttons, there's more subtlety to it. Not everybody's still subtle. Sometimes you really, you still need to. So I'm assuming that will still exist in social selling too. But eventually, nuance was felt. People, were like, if you like it, you'll like it. You
Yep.
know, yeah, and that part makes sense. There was another question I was going to ask, and I don't know if I'll even remember it. But when you were talking about social selling and integration with NBC, um, I'm sitting here going, every time I watch a house show, wouldn't it be wonderful? Because like anything that I'm building or renovating or doing, which I do on the side, I'm constantly taking inspiration. I'm like, oh, let me get a screenshot here. Let me do that. And I mean, it works well on a blog, but it doesn't work well on TV. Yeah, that's an opportunity.
Yeah, I think it's really just the combination, which I hate when people say this and they're like, oh, live shopping in the US, do what QVC does because they've
Hmm.
laid the groundwork. But I think that there's something to be said for taking a little bit of understanding of what that groundwork was,
Yes.
pivoting really far away, and then taking more inspiration from something like Pinterest, you know,
Hmm.
where Pinterest allows you to see something and then see all the other things that are similar. And they're trying, I've seen that they're trying really to add in that social shopping factor, but it's not as seamless as I think a lot of users would like. Just because it's not exactly the product that you're seeing in the video. But I
Yeah.
do love that there's that assortment of similar items, which I think can be added in with that element, especially for house hunting and like
Oh my
renovation. I
gosh.
think that would be so cool.
Yeah, if you're like you see a light fixture, or you see cabinet, or you see a color, right? You're a paint company, all these different things, right? If you can curate that, right,
Mhm.
then you start to algorithmically build that off of like, okay, we know that you're watching this show, we know that you're doing this. Here
Yeah.
are the standard places that work with this. But again, it's subtle convenience versus overt, please buy this. And I
Yes.
think that, yes, you are right to point out that culturally in different countries, things are just they're different.
Sure.
There was this thing I learned very quickly when I was doing international PR versus domestic PR, which was in the United States, you can just go to anybody and say, "Well, we make the best hamburger in America," and nobody goes, "Oh, okay." Like we kind of go, "It's probably not," but we
Yeah.
don't go, "Oh, that's a weird claim." Where you go to Europe, you go pretty much anywhere else, and you say, "Well, this is the best hamburger in Belgium," and they're gonna be like, "The fuck it is." How do you how do you know that? Like, where is the data?
Yeah.
What and so you know we have some advantages in like the claims that we can make, right? And like, but we also have some disadvantages in like, yes, we are not followers, we are leaders when it comes to social media, and I deeply understand that there are things that will and won't work.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's part of that is like, so to me it's more subtlety. As I talk to you and think about this out loud, it's more subtlety, it's more technology, it's more integration on the back end, and then it's on the stuff that you're doing is more defining who the audience is, and identifying what those opportunities even could or would be.
Yeah, absolutely. We will often spend a lot of our time trying to make a brand forget everything that they think they know that is live shopping from QVC and HSN, and just
Yeah.
understand solely that it's a thing, which great. QVC taught them that live shopping exists and can be good, but instead we try and tell them, all right, cool. You give us the information about your demographic, what type of products you have. We'll figure out from all of the social platforms that exist that have commerce capabilities, where should you start out? What path should you take? What types of selling methods should you use? Because some might benefit from a little bit more direct selling. Others will benefit from very indirect selling and simply just having more product placement,
Yeah.
which is further down the line. And so we'll often figure that out for them, strategize out what type of creators should they be working with. Because oftentimes on social commerce platforms, it's not going to be the one you would expect of having a toy influencer for a toy brand or a beauty influencer for a beauty brand. Oftentimes you want the average Joe and just your typical micro influencer, or like even, I mean, up to mid-tier influencer, just talking about things and feeling more authentic, because we're going to the era of social shopping to be similar to product testimonials rather
Yeah.
than making them more of a big advertisement. And so that's typically what we're trying to teach brands, and then we will sometimes execute on that content if they need us to physically make it for them.
It's so funny to look back at the history of, so I mean this dovetails in the history of advertising, but it also dovetails into QVC because there's a life cycle in how long people will accept a version of selling.
Mhm.
So let's look back at 1950s, 1960s. You knock on someone's door and they're like, "Oh, you're a friendly person, you're trying to sell me something," right? Somebody knocks on your door right now. One, you're probably not home. Two, if you are, you're probably not answering. Or in the case of our house, we both have work to do, so we have a note on the door that says, "Don't bug us." Not like we're not friendly people, but it's just like that's the logic of like, I'm doing a podcast right now, please don't knock on my door. um you go then to the infomercial, right? And then QVC. It has a life cycle where it works until it doesn't, because people catch on, right? It's novel and then people catch on. For a while, the celebrity endorser was big, right? Nike did a wonderful job of demonstrating that model. But even Nike, though they use that, they use multiple other strategies, right? They use both, small, medium, and macro strategies. How long of a life cycle does this have?
That's to be discovered. I hope it lasts a little while. But I think we still have a bit to go because we are still in the early stages of
Very.
it's going to evolve. But as for live selling, I feel like we have a good 5, 10 years. And then after that, it might
Mhm.
switch into a different version, a new iteration of it. But I mean, we're already seeing, even in the early stages, at the start of live shopping, at its nascency in not TikTok Shop, but I would say like even YouNow, which is no longer really the thing. When
Mm-hmm.
people would go live on platforms like that and there were sponsorship deals, scarcity was a big thing.
Yeah.
Everyone would want to talk about, we only have this many units, buy it before it sells out. And I still see people making that mistake on TikTok. People
Yes.
name their products on TikTok, buy it before it sells out. But especially if you're going on a platform like that, which most of the time it's to tap into the Gen Z and the millennial audience, they've caught on. Like
Oh,
this,
of course.
it's a trick that was used for older generations. It's not for the younger generations. They don't care. It actually bothers them to see that because it feels like you're trying to manipulate them. And that's not going to encourage them to buy. It's just going to annoy them and they will scroll because it feels like an ad that's in your face because you're trying to get them to buy. And so we've already seen that phase itself out, even though people still use it
It will
today.
always exist. Yes.
It'll always exist, but people still do that on TikTok Shop. Um, but I think that there's going to be a lot of evolution to it. We're seeing more social commerce platforms pop up, which I'm not too confident in them, but I think that they can be utilized and hopefully one day acquired by the larger
Mm-hmm.
e-commerce platforms so that they can just be integrated into marketplaces or just on website. But there's more elements of this. And so I think it's going to become, for the next, I would assume 5 to 10 years, a strong piece of social media. And then as we evolve, I think social media will just be more integrated into e-commerce in a way and marketplaces in a way where it's not so separated. So that if you want that shoppable factor that social media and social commerce can bring, it just is embedded within marketplaces and e-commerce sites.
It's so funny that like that strategy, right? They like buy it before it sells out is the same strategy that's used to sell like buy two for the price of one tactical flashlights on TV, right? Like I'm like, how is that? It's 2023 and that still exists, but it exists because it's somehow still working. So then anytime I still see something happening in like a legacy way like that, where you're still selling, oh, buy something for 4 easy installments on TV, I'm like, this can't be working, but
Yeah,
yet Flex Seal is a thing.
yeah,
So obviously it can work. It's just harder to get it to work.
yeah.
That
Right? Like look at where you see that is going to be different from where you see audiences on TikTok, right? And so
yeah.
like context.
Well, it's so funny. It's like almost history repeating itself, right? But
Yeah.
it's also but we see it, right? So if you drive past any defunct mall area in anywhere in the United States, because let's basically say that any area that has a mall is now sort of defunct, right? Because of all the things we talked about previous,
Yeah.
right?
Oops.
There's oh oops. I mean, but that's progress. Progress happens. We shift our attention. It's kind of up to us, right, to figure out where things are going to stay one step ahead. I
Yeah.
mean, that is so crucial and critical to what you're doing. But the same thing is the buy now, the scarcity thing, right? There was two things I was thinking of. It's one, it's the mattress store that always is saying, we're going out of business sale on a Friday and a Saturday. And then Tuesday, you're like, but you're still in business. How'd that happen? It's that tactic, right? It's that aggressive tactic that sometimes works, but it's not going to work long term, right? You're not going to have a large brand that's going to want to do that. That is very much a niche market for just something specific.
Yeah.
It's wild to me that still exists.
It's fascinating that you bring up the mattress example because we have a celebrity client they're in the like homeware and or home good type category, and they actually sell on QVC still,
Yeah,
because the right audience for them, and they've sold over $1 million in mattresses within 24 hours on a QVC stream. And I'm sure that there were elements to the like buy it now, probably some like layered on alleged discounts. But
hmm
it's absolutely what you're saying. It's also important to think about what audiences are you trying to tap into? Who is really going to be the demographic that you're trying to capture. Where do they live, and what kind, and by live I mean what type of platform are they
Yes.
living on, and what type of strategy is going to be best to make to resonate with them, really.
Well, and there's this interesting thing with consumer psychology where that does work. One of the things that you can take away from home shopping and QVC is that kind of crowd work, right? So the idea that people are all buying something and you're seeing more and more people buying something, that can directly apply to social selling. There is
Yeah.
an element to take from that that can work.
Yes.
But yes, seeing it in that expanse will not work for Gen Z. It won't work for millennials. It will work for a specific group. But there is that. To me, it is interesting that one part of human psychology still will work, where it's like, oh, if somebody else is getting it, and ooh, there's a buzz on it. The other thing you were talking about is like when we get into this discussion of exclusivity
Mm,
in the sneaker industry, it works really well because they have control over that, and they know,
yeah.
and we all know that you've only made X amount. We know you could make more, but you choose not to, so that we all have to try and get the drop.
Yeah.
That part does still work,
Sure.
right?
Yes. Yeah, absolutely.
But but you have to be so well entrenched in a market to make that work, right? And in
Yeah.
social selling, I think there will be layers to it before it gets there, only because it's a new platform, trust has to be built, things have to be built in order for people to go, damn. But
Yeah.
it was funny every time I'd watch an episode of Ted Lasso. I would go, and you're like, "Where the hell is Jeff going with this?" But trust me, there will be a question at the end of this long monologue. But every time I was watching Ted Lasso, I was like, "I have Sudeikis' shoes." Every episode, I was like, "Crap, I have Sudeikis' shoes." And it was like, but if I hadn't, I would have been like, "But I want those shoes." And I
Yeah.
was like because like I was so invested in Ted Lasso,
Yeah.
and I was like, and then I was like, what does this say about me that I already have had these? Don't
Wow.
know. But if you bond with a character like that, like people have
Yeah.
bonded with Ted Lasso, and you got into it. But then I had to watch his complex video where he goes sneaker shopping. I was like, yeah, no, I have those. we we have the same sneaker fetish. Oh
Yeah.
no, this is crazy. What um what makes you most excited? What makes you least excited about social selling as a whole?
Most excited is the aspect of community,
Hmm.
where I think that there's that really dystopian side of it that I recognize, where, you know, even in one of our streams, I have the Adam Smith Wealth of Nations book, like that's just all about capitalism behind it on our like book stack, which is too funny and really demented when you think about it, very dystopian.
Yeah.
But like, I say that with the awareness that that does exist and that social selling can feel really weird. But there's also the element of human behind it, which is why I have the idea and the image of like 5 to 10 years down the line of where this is just embedded into what we do, and making people feel like they have the ability to access the products and understand what sort of style they might need to go for to achieve the sort of look that they are looking to achieve. And to me, that gives me confidence that there is an opportunity where people like myself, who when I was a kid and I was on the spectrum, undiagnosed, and I had a really hard time connecting with people, I would turn to live streams for the sake of having connection. And I wanted to look like the person who was streaming a lot of the time. I wanted to feel like I was a part of that community. So what you're saying about, identifying as that character, it's undeniable that the physical objects and material things will often help you feel like you have the ability to align more with something. And so to me, I feel like there's an opportunity for people to feel more connected and plugged into the kind of person they want to be, or feel like they have that community, because social commerce will enable live streaming, because obviously live streaming has been powered by monetization tools like tipping, but the average consumer
Yeah.
can't pay as much as a major corporation that has the budget behind them, which can support live streaming to continue. And so that, to me, there's a lot of elements to it. So it's a pretty complex answer to a really reasonable question, but I think that there's a lot of community that can be built from live streaming in a really beautiful way and make people feel more connected. And so that's the best part of it. It's knowing that we're working towards that. I know that a lot of traditional social commerce agencies function from like, what's the bottom line? ROI, let's do this. And we also do that, but we try and do it with the understanding that overall what's best for humanity is going to be and for live streaming is to have that authentic human approach and thinking human
Yeah.
first. And so that excites me. The worst part of live streaming is the utter confusion that people have, and social commerce in general, with what is this? And I'm so excited that
Hmm.
it's slowly becoming more mainstream. People are starting to understand what it is. But the level of confusion that has existed for the last, I would say, like 6 years in the social commerce space in particular has really been frustrating, because brands especially will sometimes struggle to understand the opportunity, and creators feel like there's a massive barrier to entry because they haven't gone live before, and most of the people that they admire are static content creators or pre-recorded video. And
Yeah.
so it's really tough to try and explain to people sometimes what the opportunity is in just like a one conversation type setting. As they get more exposed to it, I see that changing, and I'm really excited about it, because there's so much opportunity in this space for creators to really change their lives and become affiliate content creators on TikTok Shop or get sponsored on Twitch or Amazon. And that excites me for them, but they don't get it yet a lot of the time. And then with brands, it's the same thing, where it's so foreign,
Yeah.
and they are like, our social teams are here, our e-commerce teams are here, our finance teams are here. How do
Oh
we
yeah.
make this all an integrated thing? Let's just ignore it. And so that's frustrating, but I'm confident that we're going in the right direction with it.
I think we could have spent 15, 20 minutes just talking about how disconnected those three parts of an organization are, right?
Yeah.
I felt that 10 years ago when I was trying to advocate strongly for utilizing just any bits of social influence in an organization. Like,
Yeah.
you mean just like, we give them a t-shirt? I'm like, no, 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 no. Like, we build like long-term relationships for like 5 years with people so that this is embedded and people turn to you. A couple other things when you were talking about it, like obviously this is a obvious B2C thing. I think there is room for B2B in this. I think this will, especially when you're getting into kind of the more subtle parts of product placement, once there's nuance in this. But lastly, when you were talking, people pay for things that help them feel identity.
Yeah.
That part was felt. That part, like, yes, we'll give you a tip because we want to see you continue, right? That's
Mhm.
why Substack exists. That's why there are lots of things for that. But we'll pay the most for things that help us feel a sense of identity. And so, yeah, that will be really crucial, and I think brands will, it's like probably 2025 when Stranger Things comes out now. But any brand that isn't trying to, work themselves in, they've done a really good job with product placement. But any brand that's not trying to work themselves into that last season of Stranger Things, it's ridiculous. And I think we're going to feel the same way about social selling, because those will be there's this interesting thing where the content that people watch, consume, and identify with the most will be veering more towards live streamers than it will be static television. And therefore, this part will be so much more important. As those two things lean toward each other, that's why I think this has so much more potential in the next 5 to 10 years. Nicole, when I close these out, I do something called Keep It Short. It's 3 questions. I have not thought of them until now. Um, they're short questions. Your answers do not have to be short. They can be as long as you want. Are you ready?
Sure, let's do it.
Your best advice to a 16-year-old streamer right now?
Right now, if they're streaming, I would say please, please get a VPN.
Yeah.
VPN if you're streaming on browser, and make sure you're setting up everything so that you are safe and you are okay. Protect yourself. It's so important that your well-being, both physical safety and mental health, are intact because it is tough out there. You're going to grow thick skin, and that's great, but do everything you can to be proactive.
Yeah, it's both wanting to trust humanity and then also having a healthy distrust of humanity.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, Question two, what is the best example you've seen right now to date of social selling?
Um, I think
You
it's
can also choose your own, by the way.
oh, okay. Um, well, no, I say that one of the best efforts I've seen would have to be what Taco Bell does with Twitch streamers, and
Hmm.
also like Chipotle. Like those two with Twitch streamers historically have just done a really great job of trying to find the right kind of audience that wants convenience and is going to be more focused on what their passions are and their hobbies are than traditionally someone who might have more time spent elsewhere. And so they have done such a good job of sponsoring creators, having the right placements in their paid media, and really just becoming an integrated part of the Twitch community, which I find so admirable. Wendy's did this too, Red Bull, like all of these incredible brands have understood Twitch years before everyone else and tried it out in such cool ways and worked with streamers in really exciting ways, sponsoring tournaments, not seeming like everything has to be about the brand, but instead just doing things in a way that felt natural and just trying it out, learning from that and growing, starting with what feels like a product placement on TV and then expanding that out into longer term contracts with creators and having these strong partnerships with the platform, becoming an ally of the gaming community. Like, I think that is so cool. And then separately, I love, and I don't feel like people talk about this enough. I don't know if it was a successful campaign, but I think it was brilliant and such a great teaser into the future. That Amazon Live and Calvin Klein did like the coolest stream where they had a performer. I cannot remember. I think it was Saweetie, where they had
Hmm.
a musician that was just doing a live stream wearing the brand's clothing and just performing and then talking about it in between stuff and saying, oh, you can buy it here if you want this, which is so cool. And I feel like more fashion brands need to do things like that, where it's just adding that element into other partnerships that they might have with larger celebrities.
Right. If you're hit over the head with it, right, and you're hit with a bunch of buttons, no. But if the artist that you're there to see, because obviously you're there for that, like I just watched it an hour. This is gonna date me. I watched an hour long Amazon Live after football of Green Day, and I watched the whole thing. I liked about half of it, but I watched the whole thing, and yes, Billy Joel says something, in between may not be influenced. Maybe. I think if AJR said it, I'd buy it. But question three, this is to flip it. Advice to creators to make it easier to find these opportunities. And before you answer, I think what's really interesting, I ask a lot of creators in this podcast and just otherwise, like, what were your intentions? They're like, I don't know. Just got into it. Things happened. Like there's this accidental quality to how most creators talk about how they got there. I
Yeah.
don't think the whole premise of this podcast being it's a fluke is that it's not. You obviously possess qualities that would make people want to connect with you. There are no accidents. If you hadn't done it here, you would have done it somewhere else. Is my basic premise.
Fair enough.
But and there is just that's just kind of a norm now to kind of express humility. So sometimes I don't know if the person's actually humble or if they're just that's the kind of the like, oh, I can't say that I just systematically knew how to do X, Y, and Z and then I built a following. That would sound boring. I just have to be like, I just woke up one day and had 1 million followers. But how do creators, as they're starting out, and I think this is more important, as they're starting out, think through ways to make it more palatable to, create deals.
Exactly the opposite of what creators are telling you if they're trying to be humble.
Yes.
It's really funny. I mean, like there are so many creators who have that sort of, rise where they're coming in here and they're like, yes, I am just a creator and I love creating and that's beautiful and I love that for them. And like audiences came to me, but you are definitely putting in some sort of strategy,
Mm-hmm.
or it's just being charismatic. You turn that charm on when you're in front of the camera. That's great. And I am absolutely not that kind of person who's going to hide behind saying that, like, I just was a streamer and people came to me. No, every single show that I put on as a streamer, when I would stream for hours, came with every ounce of strategy, trying to figure out how I could increase my average watch time, how I could convert
Mm-hmm.
these people into long-term subscribers of my channel on YouNow, how I could make them follow me onto different platforms. And so these elements might not be consciously thought of by creators, but start to think about it like that. I think that now creators are becoming more savvy than ever, and they're learning from different people who are outwardly broadcasting information about how to DIY it. You don't always need a manager or an agent. You
Mm-hmm.
might have one, and that's great, but like as a creator, there is no time like right now where you can have so many resources that you can utilize to become a strong advocate for yourself so that brands want to come to you and that you can set these appropriate rates so you're paid fairly for what you do. And so, in terms of how you can find these opportunities, I would say that the most useful thing you can do right now is create as much content as possible, increase your stats, your data, get everything as up as possible, make really good viral content as much as you can. I understand that that's like go viral is not the best advice ever, but just take information and analyze the content you've made. What's done well? How can I replicate this success? And the more you do that, the more brands are going to have you on their radar, because the more influencer marketing managers and social media
Mm-hmm.
advertisers are going to want to do something about it. I would say the two pieces of most actionable advice are right now, get onto TikTok Shop. I say this because I know what's going on behind the scenes, and I'm telling
Yeah.
you, this is such a huge opportunity for creators. If you have 5,000 or more followers and you're in the US, you can register. I believe you have to be 18 or older to get set up. And from doing that, right now, most of it is free samples and you can post for exchange of commission. But more and more, I'm seeing that the commission is getting higher. There's hybrids of flat fees. There's more sponsorship opportunities. That is going to be huge for creators, and anyone can go viral. It doesn't matter if you just have that minimum of 5,000 followers. I'm seeing really small creators, quote unquote, blowing up and making a ridiculous amount, six-figure monthly commissions on TikTok Shop, which is
Yep.
insane, unheard of. And you can post an assortment of stuff. The other actionable piece of advice I would give is not very traditional, but I would say to make a LinkedIn. And that's not something that most creators take advantage of. But if you are trying to build your personal brand, a lot of the people who are going to sponsor you are influencer managers who live on LinkedIn. So what you
Mm-hmm.
should be doing is branding yourself as this wonderful creator that's built a really strong audience in this space, and learn to connect with these people. I wouldn't necessarily say flood their inbox and tell them to sponsor you. Just build a reasonable connection with them, or build your audience up and blow up as much as you can on LinkedIn. Try and use that content to explain what you're doing. And more marketers are going to keep their eyes out and be like, this is the understanding of how you did this. And they're going to want to work with you. And so those are the two most pressing pieces of advice that I think creators should get on immediately.
That is awesome. Those are super action. No, because it's professionalism and certainty, right? When you're talking to, working with brands and you're saying, brands want to know that you can duplicate this. They want to, take the risk out of it. They want to mitigate risk. So if they know that you can continue to do this, they'll want to do it more with you. If people, know that you have some, business savvy behind it, right? And you're easy to work with, so you're on a LinkedIn. Yes. But yes. Yeah, don't flood the inbox.
Yeah, don't do
Please.
that. That's
Don't do
not,
that.
it's not
Just
as I say.
just be visible, I think, is a wonderful piece of advice. So, Nicole, thanks so much for doing this.
Thanks so much for having me on. This was wonderful. I really appreciate it.
Awesome. Okay, so that will stop it.